Hello, saver. Whether you're saving for that trip to the tropics or saving for an emergency, now is the time to take advantage of Wells Fargo's savings options. Wells Fargo offers savings accounts that can help you save towards your goals. So, what are you saving for? Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/save to open a savings account today.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast with the spotlight on section hikers.
And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. And we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Welcome back to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, your premier podcast with the spotlight on section hikers, and I am your host, Julie Jester Gayhart. Before we get to the topic and guest of today's show, I wanted to remind you all that if you go over to the podcast website at hikingradionetwork.com and click on this podcast, you have the option to sign up to receive emails from me. Each week, in addition to posting the podcast on social media sites, I also send out an email with more information than what you would normally see on social media or in the show notes of this episode. I hope you guys will consider joining the email list. It's a great way to connect outside of the show. This week, I am happy to be back with my guest co-host, Charissa Hipp. Over the past couple of years since the podcast started, one of the number one questions I get asked as a section hiker is, how do you go about planning your section hikes each year? And then the second most asked question is, what do you do in between your section hikes? As you will hear, we both come to the conclusion that those two questions are not easy to answer. Before we get to the bulk of the episode, Charissa catches us up on what's happening at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, shares some information about those coveted AT hiker tags, and the upcoming Flip Flop Festival in April. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast, everybody, and now on to my chat with Charissa. All right, Charissa, happy 2022, and welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy 2022. Let's hope this is a good year.
I know. I mean, let's raise our coffee cups because we both are having coffee. We are recording again on a Sunday morning. It seems to be our thing. And as always, we have already had an awesome conversation even before I hit the record button. And Charissa's been filling me in on what's been happening in her life over the holidays and past the holidays. And as you all know, we start the episode out with Charissa giving us some updates from the ATC because she is the Visitor Center Supervisor at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. So Charissa, I turn it over to you.
All right. Well, we had some beautiful pine roping up for the holidays. So I'm kind of sad to go back in now that the holidays are over and take that down. It looks so pretty. And maybe some of it on the outside of the building will be able to stay up for a little while because it's always fun to look at any, through hiker or section hiker photos that are taken out by the infamous sign when it has pine around it. And you can kind of tell, oh, this was a December photo or early January. But we are, hearing from a lot of people who are planning through hikes in 2022, getting some of those questions from people who are registered or who are about to register or still kind of mulling the idea of a 2022 through hike.
Now's the time. It's January, getting ready to be early February, and people have already started.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so we're getting lots of questions about those infamous hang tags And people
Dun,
are
dun, dun.
excited to get those and to feel very official once they do their little Leave No Trace Q&A and get their
So
hang
they do
tag.
exist this year. Hikers are going to get them.
Yes, they do exist. They should either be waiting for us when we get back or en route to Harpers Ferry.
Excellent. Now, I do have a question about the hang tags because I've had actually section hikers ask me, can they get a hang tag if they go to Harpers Ferry? Like, who gets a hang tag, or is it just for through hikers?
That is a great question. And my understanding is that we are coming out with some better guidelines and some more specific guidance on that this year, because it's my understanding that as long as a section hiker is intending to, complete the trail at some point and they've registered their hike on AT Camp, that is something, if they go through the Leave No Trace Q&A with us, that they can obtain. But we should have some more specific guidelines on that when we get back from the holidays. So.
Excellent. And because I finished the trail in 2017 as a section hiker, the hang tags didn't exist. So I didn't even think about a hang tag, but you mentioned Leave No Trace, little educational. So what does a through hiker have to do to get the tag?
All right. Well, registering their through hike on AT Camp is one of the things that we ask people to do to get the hang tag. And then the other component is usually there's a Leave No Trace presentation either given at Amicalola Falls or, we'll do that at Harpers Ferry if people don't have a hang tag yet and they want to get one. We talk to them about food storage, about ticks, about proper, bathroom etiquette, if you will, and how to properly do that in the woods and leave no trace. And so one of the other things we talk to, especially northbound hikers about, is the fact that the corridor really narrows as they go head further north. So there's not as much dispersed camping that they may have been used to in the south. So we ask them to, especially, as they head out of Harpers Ferry into Maryland, it's camping in designated campsites only. And we remind them that, especially as they get up into, parts of Maryland, but more so probably Pennsylvania, that there are places where you're going to pop out on the trail and you're going to almost be in someone's backyard. So it's the trail corridor changes a lot as they continue further north.
And that's actually great information to know for, section hikers as well, because, section hikers are all over the place, depending on where they need to be that year for their hike. So I'm assuming the southbounder, do they get their tag at Baxter State Park, or would that be?
Yeah, a lot of times they'll get it in Monson. This past year was a little different. I'm not really sure. A lot of ridge runners had the tags this year. But I think that was because, our visitor centers had opened up later than normal to the public. But yeah, if they're coming south, a lot of times they've already gotten it from the visitor center up in Monson.
Perfect. And anything else coming up as far as maybe March, April timeframe for the ATC?
On April 23rd, the towns of Bolivar and Harpers Ferry, they have a Trail in Town Alliance. They're trail communities. And they are working on planning a placeholder event for the Flip Flop Festival. The individual who had planned that in the past isn't available to plan it anymore. It takes a great deal of time to put something like that together. But one of the community members has stepped up and said, let's do a placeholder event so people don't think this event is going away, because it is very important to the community. And so on April 23rd, they are planning a one-day flip-flop festival. They're working on getting a speaker right now and some music entertainment. And then on my end, through ATC, we're working on planning some outdoor workshops. In the past, that's been done in the basement of one of the churches at Harpers Ferry National Historical Park. And of course, with COVID concerns, we want to do that outside so that it's safer to gather. And so right now the plans are to do the workshops during the day. I think the community has a few more things. I guess the breakfast has always been a popular part of that event. And then there would be like a keynote speaker and musical entertainment at the barn in the evening.
Excellent. And even if it is one day, I mean, that is great because really, the flip-flop hike has really become more of a thing. And I think that's the time frame that people kick off their actual flip-flop hike, which is great. So thank you for the updates. And now we will move over to, I wish I would have recorded. I say this all the time, our conversation that we had about these two questions before I actually hit the record button. So I won't say probably, the most popular two questions that I always get from listeners. The first one is, how do you go about planning your section hikes? And the second is, what do you do in between your hikes? And I was thinking about these are loaded questions. And for me, I completed what I could consider my ultimate section hike, which was of the Appalachian Trail in 2017. And everybody knows, I think at this point, I'm an educator. So what I did is I kind of revolved literally my entire life and all of my time off, whether it was spring break, Christmas holidays, or in the summer, to completing that section hike. And I think one of the things that I do, even now, here we are in January, getting ready to be the beginning of February, I kind of look at things in three different ways. Is there like an overall goal that I want to achieve this year? And then within that, I have these mini goals. And then I have daily goals. One of the things that I strive to do is get out daily, at my local nature preserve and get that fresh air and all that wonderful stuff. And as I was telling you this, I think I kind of had a revelation. After 2017, I don't really know if I'm planning anymore. And I think you're kind of in that same area where, you have this goal and then you complete that goal. And it's almost like you don't know what to do after that.
Right.
And I'm in this point now where here it is January, and I have in mind maybe what a big goal for me would be, but I don't know if I'm going to say that or if I'm even going to do that. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. I feel that way. And, I was expressing that to you before you hit the record button about, having completed the 52 hike challenge for like 4 years now. And I feel like, okay, last year, my daughter and I tried to do 52 unique hikes to try to do a slightly different spin on that. We added some mileage goals. I wanted to do 500 miles. She wanted to do 365. Like, we hit those. And I just am not sure, like, what's next other than continuing to, piece by piece work on the AT.
Right. And now, you're working at the Conservancy. Right. So you're kind of surrounded. Yeah. And she's at school. And you're surrounded by that. And I think I've realized, since I completed that in 2017, I was trying to force myself to continue to plan something every year. So, okay, in January, I'm going to make this announcement to myself and say, I am going to hike 500 miles of this trail or 400 miles of this trail. And that's going to be my focus for the whole year. And that is not the case. And when I say mini goals, a mini goal could be the 52 hike challenge. A mini goal could be, 100 hikes in a year. It could be taking on the 40 Great Day hikes on the Mountains of Sea Trail. Mm-hmm. And that is actually the last big project that I did was the 40-day hikes, and I podcasted about them. And I haven't really talked a ton about my hiking after that. Last year, I had the failed attempt on the John Muir Trail. So I did talk about that. So I think I've concluded this is a very hard question. And Charissa's just shaking her head, yes.
It is. Yeah, it really is. And I think it's okay not to have specific goals. When you, like I said, for me, doing the 52 hike challenge initially was to become more of a year-round hiker, not a fair weather hiker. And it was great at doing that. It got me outside in the winter, and I realized that, hey, I actually really like winter hiking. There's not as many people out there, which is what I love about hiking. And I like those kind of solitude hikes and quiet hikes and hikes where you don't have to like try to track down a parking spot. So, it accomplished what I needed. And now I'm kind of moving past that. And no, nothing bad about the 52 hike challenge. I think it's a great way to get people outside. And I see people really excited about it for this year. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And, so an overall section hiking goal for me this year, I'm not sure I have one. I do have some mini goals and I have daily goals. So as far as hiking goes, I would say my mini goal is, which coincides with the daily goal, is to get out there. I want to be in shape.
Mm-hmm.
I really do want to spend the year like getting overall in shape. And if that means hiking at my local nature preserve, then I put a check mark on that. If that means going up to the mountains of Western North Carolina and getting on some of the trails that I haven't been on over there, then I put a big check mark on that. I do have this carrot dangling out there. I have about 500 or 600 miles left on the AT to be a second time completer.
Yay.
And I want to start section hiking the Mountains of Sea Trail. So I guess I do have overall goals. I'm just not saying this year, this is exactly what I'm going to do.
Well, and I think, we're still living in somewhat uncertain times. So I think it's good to have that flexibility.
And, you and I, it's different talking about section hiking than through hiking because, we have our family life, we have our work life. And so I don't know, you guys, if we answered that question good enough for you. How do you go about planning your section hikes? But there's kind of where I'm at right now. And I think, Charissa, you're kind of in the same place. And then the question of what do you do in between your hikes? I think this year for me, that's going to lead into another thing we want to talk about is giving back. Because over the last year, really since COVID, I've had this turn, and that's, very thankful to the Mountains of Sea Trail of giving back to the trails. So where are you, Charissa, when it comes to what do you do in between your hikes and where you see yourself going?
Well, especially with a young daughter who loves hiking, stewardship has always been a really important component to me because I want to teach her how to give back. And so, last year we were really lucky to have the opportunity to meet up with the Blue Mountain Eagle Climbing Club and paint some blazes on the AT. I think this year a goal for us will be to get more involved with our local trail crews with PATC and be able to get out and do some of that work locally because it was fun to paint blazes. It was about a 3-hour drive to get there. So it's not something that we can do on a regular basis with that particular trail crew. But because we had the connection with Michelle, who invited us to go do that, it was, a great day. But I think that's something that we want to continue and not just make a one-time thing. For me, I had been working with the PATC on their newsletter, and it's a huge time commitment. And so I'm having to step down from that now that I'm working full time because it's just really hard to juggle both. And when I first agreed to do that, it was during COVID, and I was like, how can I get involved without being able to take Julia out with me on, to work on a trail crew? But now I know a little bit more that there are other opportunities that I can get her out there with me. There are people who do take kids along and kids that are involved with PATC, which is great to see, getting them started at that early age. So I'm going to step back from the newsletter. But yeah, I do want to get involved in more opportunities. And there was a women's hiking summit that I was involved with a few months ago. They're having another one this spring at Bear's Den, and Julia and I are both going to be involved with that, Pigtails and I. And, there's actually an online version of the summit that's coming up too, I think before the actual in-person one. And that's something that I'm going to be involved with again. So, I think it's just a matter of kind of finding what fits as to where my life is at right now with back to work full time and her in school full time and, just trying to teach her and to show her that the AT is this incredible community, and that stewardship is important and it's needed to keep the trail looking good and, being the AT as we know it.
Yeah. And I think, as you were talking, you always do this, Charissa. You always put me in a very mellow, like calm mood and give me, perspective. So I guess my conclusion with those two questions and giving back would be, it depends on where you are. It depends on if you, if your goal is, I'm going to finish, the Appalachian Trail, the Mountains of Sea, but whatever trail, Pacific Crest Trail, then you have to be intentional with everything surrounding your life, which I was for 12 years. Everything revolved around completing the Appalachian Trail. And whenever I had a second off, that's what I did. And since I completed that, everything has changed. And now I have more things open to me. And what I've realized is I don't need a commitment. I don't have to commit to a thing.
Right.
As far as my hiking goes. And because the reality is I'm not going to stop working. I still have many, many working years ahead of me in different things that I want to do, career wise. And as far as giving back, I do want to talk about, I did mention a couple episodes ago in my introduction that I was invited to be on the Mountains of Sea Trail board of directors. So I'm very excited about that.
Where's that applause button?
I know. This new software we're using, I'm afraid to hit it because it goes on for like a minute. So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to give back to the long distance trail in my state of North Carolina. I'm excited to give back to the community. And I'm excited to kind of represent the hikers on that board. And I think that's one of the reasons that they asked me to be on the board is because they're looking for a diverse group of members to be on there. And I don't know what that consists of yet because I'm getting ready to go to my first board meeting. So maybe that's something we can talk about when we come back and reconvene next month. And then not over volunteering, because I find myself doing that too. Do you find yourself doing that?
Yes. Sometimes it's like, okay, you have to sit on the hands so that they're not like, okay, I'll do this. It's easy to get excited about something, but then, yeah.
Especially when that light bulb goes off in your brain and you're like, oh my goodness, I could morph from this hike to, give back. But you also want to put that give back in the realm of reality. There's always so much you could do on a weekend. There's always only so much you could do on those off hours in between your full-time job.
Right.
So you and I laugh about this, but we actually had a conversation on being very intentional on what you volunteer for and knowing when to say no.
Yes.
So do you want to speak on that a little bit?
I think it's just, like you said, the intentionality of it. You need to kind of think it through. And, I think we had talked about it before when I was kind of talking about the fact that it was a lot to be working and to do the Potomac Appalachian, because the PATC newsletter is a big publication. It's usually 20 plus pages. And the reality of it is when I'm not at work, I do want to be outside and I do want to be in nature or on the trail with Julia. I don't want to be sitting behind a computer screen, editing documents and figuring out where the errors are and going back and forth with layout on things. I want to be outside when I have that free time. And so, for me, like I said, I had to kind of reframe it and think, well, maybe now is the time to be able to do more outdoor things with PATC and more trail work, because I can, get outside and do that. And I know now that there are times when I can take Julia with me. And so maybe more computer work isn't the answer for me right now. It's not the best fit.
No, I don't think that's the answer ever.
Yeah.
I want to close out this episode. I'm not quite sure if we've answered those two questions, but I think we've done a great job of letting people know it's okay not to answer those questions, especially as section hikers. It's different when you're through hiking. You've got that intention. Yes, in the year 2022, I'm going to through hike this trail. I'm going to get my gear together. this is what I'm starting, and here we go. When it comes to section hiking, that's why it takes people, more than 1 year, 30 years to complete a trail, because you have all this life and everything that happens in between. And that's okay too.
Yeah, that's totally the case.
And volunteering's okay.
Right.
And
but
you
be
put
realistic.
There you go. Be realistic. Again, you ground me again, being realistic.
Yes.
And I can follow this thing too, where I look on social media and I see all these people posted pictures and I want to be at those places or whatever. And it's okay if you're not.
Right.
And it's okay if you don't put a post up every day on social media.
It is. The world will still keep turning.
The world will still keep turning. But you did put a beautiful post up. And at this point, when the episode comes out, right at the beginning of January, and you kind of stated your intention of how you want to perceive your hiking for the year. So talk about that, and then you can close out the episode for us.
All right. So Pigtails, or Julia, my daughter, and I, who's 6, she and I were out on the trail on New Year's Eve trying to finish out our hiking goals for the year. And it just really hit me, even though we were striving for miles that day. As we hit the trail, she looked up and she saw along the Potomac River the white tops, and she was like, look at those sycamore trees. And then she looked down and she was like, look at this perilla along the edge of the trail. And she was just spouting off all of these things. And I was like, wow, all of our kind of geeking out in nature has really, had an effect on her. She really knows how to recognize certain plants, certain trees. And it's just so cool to me that she has kind of that nature base that she can hopefully always go back to in life. And I was like, these are the really special moments, not the fact that, it's cool that she's 6 years old and she hiked 365 miles last year, but she's probably not going to remember that. I think what she's going to remember is those moments of trying to figure out where that blue heron went that we scared and went actually underneath the trail through a drainage ditch the other day as we were hiking, or, how those white tops of the sycamores look in winter, or what the, leaves look like in the fall. And I was like, these are the really special moments. And, nature connection is huge for me. And I've been part of a group locally here for the past few years called Church of the Wild. And so I picked up a book recently, kind of gifted it to myself for Christmas, called Church of the Wild. And there was a really neat quote in the very beginning of it that I came across the other day that I thought it would be cool to share. And it says, once upon a time, all humans knew their lives, their food, their survival, their sense of meaning and kinship with God or the gods was connected with all their relations, the hawks and soil and ferns and mosquitoes. Like all the other wild creatures, they belonged to the land and they knew it. They were untamed and self-willed and listened to their own intrinsic authority. They were part of a grand conversation, a relationship of reciprocity and respect, connecting them with all the other beings and elements of life.
I love that.
So that's what I'm striving for in the new year.
Yes. And I'm going to say, well, first of all, thank you again for joining me. And you will definitely be back next month. And why don't we all just be more like pigtails?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Thanks, Charissa.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
After Charissa and I got done recording this episode, I immediately went back and listened to it again. And yes, the conclusion is still the same. There are many answers to those two questions, and the answers are so individual depending on where you are with your own section hiking, what trail you are section hiking, and what's happening in your life at the time. And it's okay to take as many years as you want to complete long-distance trails, and well, you may conclude you don't want to complete the trail at all, but be more like pigtails and discover all the beauty around you as you are out hiking. And really, isn't that what it's all about? As always, you can go to hikingradionetwork.com and click on the Jester Section Hiker Show to find all of today's show notes, pictures, and links mentioned in this episode. If you find value in what we do here at the network, consider leaving us a donation by clicking on any one of the donate buttons found on our website. And be sure to let us know why you love our shows. Thanks for listening, be safe out there, and happy section hiking.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning light. I wonder if you'd wander with me, and I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. You're wondering if I go wandering with you, what kind of trouble we'll get ourselves into. Would it be wrong to tag along with a band of vagabonds? You wonder if I'd wander with you. So I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river. I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way, if you ever get lost or if the trail leads you astray. The music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Wells Fargo presents one of the surest ways to grow your money, a Wells Fargo CD account, where you can earn a 5.00% annual percentage yield on an 11-month term with a minimum opening deposit of $5,000. Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/CD rates to open a CD account and start growing your savings with us.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.